Hi, everybody. We are going to start our second lecture today on um, population ecology. So let's go ahead and begin. So we began by looking at the level of ecological organization. We always start with the smallest level of ecological organizations, the organisms, which refers to a single living individual, such as a sea lion or a fish. As we move up the population, it consists of many individuals of the same species living and interacting in the same area, like a colony of fish. Expanding further, community includes all the different species that live and interact in a particular environment, such as an organism found in a giant kelp forest. When these living organisms interact with the non-living components, which we refer to them as abiotic, that include the water, sunlight, and nutrients, they form what we call an ecosystem, such as, let's say, a Southern California coastal ecosystem. At the largest level, all the ecosystem on the Earth together form what we call a biosphere, which includes every region of the planet where life exists. Now, building on the level of ecological organizations, we can now look at the different areas of ecology that scientists study. First is the organismal ecology, which focuses on the relationships between an individual, an organism, and its environment. Sorry about that. Relationship between an individual, an organism, and its environment. At this level, ecologists study how a single organism survives, behaves, and adapts to an environmental factors such as temperature, water, availability of food, resources. And then moving into the population ecology, this is the field that focuses on groups of individuals of the same species living in the same area. Now, population ecologists study the dynamics that causes a population to change over time, including birth rates, death rates, immigration, and immigration. They also investigate the factors that influence the distributions and abundance of individuals within a population. For us to understand these changes, scientists examine several key population characteristics, which include population size, which is total number of individuals, population density, which describe how many individuals occur within a given area, distribution, which refers to how individuals are spaced within their environment, and lastly, other characteristics that include sex ratios, which is the proportion of male to females within a population, age structure, which describe the number of individuals in different age groups, and then finally, what we consider growth rates, which shows us how quickly a population increases or decreases over time. Now, these factors together help scientists understand how population functions and respond to environmental changes. Continuing with population ecology, population size refers to the total number of individuals in a population at a given time. However, population size is not constant and it can change due to several factors. There are four main processes that affect population size, and these are birth and immigration, which add individuals to the population, increasing its size, and in contrast, death and immigration removes the individual from the population size, causing to decrease in numbers. Together, these processes determine how a population grows, declines, or remains stable over time. Now, we consider population density, which refers to the number of individuals living within a given area. Population density can influence how organisms interact with each other and their environment. In a high-density population, individuals live closer together, This means there is less personal space, which often leads to a more frequent interaction among individuals. And you can see that in the picture of the birds that I have. Now, high density are commonly seen in smaller organisms, which require few resources and typically less space to survive. In contrast, the low density populations have individuals that are more spread out. This provides a more personal space and results in a fewer interaction between these individuals. Larger organisms typically occur at lower densities because they require more space and also more resources such as food and water to survive. Now, understanding population density help ecologists explain the patterns in either competition, social interaction, and resources they use within a population. Now, another important population characteristic is the spatial arrangement of an organism. Basically, what that describes is how individuals are positioned within a population. One pattern is a random distribution where individuals are spread without a clear pattern. This is what you see on the first image. This often occurs when resources are widely available, so organisms do not need to compete strongly for space. A second pattern is a uniform distribution, which is part B in our image. This pattern commonly results from territorial behavior or competition, where organisms maintain a certain distance from each other. The third pattern is clumped, which is our part C. This is where individuals group together in certain areas. This usually happens because resources such as food, water, shelter, etc., are concentrated in a specific location. So think about a body of water, for instance, causing organisms to gather where those resources are available. Now, again, these patterns, generally speaking, help ecologists understand how resources availability and interactions between the organism shape the structure of our population. So another important aspect of population ecology is the sex ratio, which usually refers to the proportion of male to females within a population. The sex ratio can influence how quickly a population is able to reproduce. For example, if there are more females than males, the population may have a greater potential for growth. Another key concept is the age structure, also called age distribution. This describes the relative number of individuals in different age groups within a population, such as young, reproductive, or older individuals. Now, age structure is important because it helps scientists predict whether a population is likely to grow, remain stable, or decline in future, depending on how many individuals are either entering or leaving the reproductive stage. So this is showing you the age group, and you can notice that as we kind of go into the farther age for the age group versus male and female. This is an old graph associated with China's population, by the way, for 2013. Now, another important concept in population ecology is population growth rate, which describes how quickly the size of a population changes over a certain period of time. Population growth is influenced by four main factors. We already talked about this, but review them. Birth and immigration add individuals to a population, while death and emigration remove individuals. By considering all of these four factors together, scientists can calculate the overall population growth rate. Sometimes ecologists also calculate what we call rate of natural increase, which basically focuses on only birth and death. This helps scientists understand the population changes that occur naturally without movement of individuals either in or out of the population. Growth rate is typically expressed as a percentage. Converting growth rate to a percentage allows researchers to compare populations of different sizes, making it a little bit easier to analyze patterns in population growth across different species and within an ecosystem. Now, over here, we look at two common models that describe how population grows over time. One is referred to as exponential growth, and the other one is referred to as logistic growth. Exponential growth occurs when a population increases without any environmental limits. So think about all the resources that are available. In this situation, the rate of increase remains a constant percentage, meaning the population grows faster as it becomes larger. When graphed, exponential graph produces what we call a J-shaped curve. However, this type of under-regulated growth usually do not last a long time in nature because resources are eventually become limited. Now, in contrast, logistics growth describes a more realistic pattern of population growth. In this model, the population initially grows rapidly, but over time, the growth rate shows as the growth rate slows as the environmental limits begin to affect the population. This produces what we call an S-shaped curve. The slowing of the growth occurs because of limiting factors, what we mentioned before. Now, this could be typically environmental, including physical, chemical, or biological factors such as food, availability of the resources, such as space, disease within a population, or even ability of predators to access that prey. Eventually, the population reaches what we call a carrying capacity, which is the maximum number of individuals that the environment can sustain within a period of time. At this point, population growth is what we refer to as stabilized. So again, make sure you guys can distinguish between what we call an exponential J-shaped curve versus a logistical growth, which is an S-shaped curve. Now we look at two major categories of limiting factors that affect population growth. Now, these are basically what, as the terminology implies, limits how fast a population can grow in terms of number. Now, these two factors are density-dependent factors and density-independent factors. Density-dependent factors are factors that become stronger as populations become more crowded. When more individuals live in the same area, then competitions and interactions increases. For example, competition for food, space, or territory, competition for mates, competition for breeding habitats, disease and parasites within a population, and even predation increases. Now, these factors that we listed help us or help the population be regulated in size as density increases. Now, in the other hand, density-independent factors affect population regardless of how large or small these populations are. These factors are usually related to our environmental conditions. For instance, temperature extremes, drought, flooding, fires, natural disasters like tornadoes, as well as habitat destructions or pollutions. Now, these factors together limits the population growth and determines the size of the population that that ecosystem can handle at a given time. Here is some of the visualization that may help you distinguish between what we consider this density dependent versus density independent factors. Now, another important topic in ecology is what we call conservation of endangered species. Now, what do we consider an endangered species? It is a species that are at the risk of extinction across all or a large part of that natural range. Conservation efforts focuses on protecting these species by preserving their habitats, reducing threats, and supporting population recovery. Another concept related to population ecology is what we refer to as invasive species. Invasive species are what we consider to be non-native organisms that enter into a new environment where they are not naturally found. Now, these species can spread very quickly and often cause what we call ecological damage by either competing with native species, altering habitat, or disrupting the balance within an ecosystem. For us, it is important to understand what is an endangered species versus an invasive species, because it helps us protect biodiversity and also allow us to maintain what we consider a healthy ecosystem. Now, population ecology is not only used to understand how population grow and interact, but it also has an important practical application in things like agriculture and resource management. One application is a biological control of pests. So as you know, there are lots of biological pests that can damage the harvest and the agricultural products that can have a significant effect on our food supplies. Now, the biological control of our pests involve releasing what we consider natural predators or parasites or pathogens that control the population of the pest species. Instead of using chemical pesticides, biological control uses natural ecological relationship to reduce pest numbers as well as protecting the crops. Another application is sustainable resource management. Scientists use population data to determine the maximum amount of resources that can be harvested without actually damaging the population's long-term survival. For example, researchers study crops yield, fish population, or forest resources to ensure that harvesting today doesn't impact or prevent future harvests. These applications show how understanding population ecology help humans manage ecosystems more responsibly, as well as maintaining resources for future generations. So we will stop our lecture for this part now. I have some questions added to our PowerPoint to help you check your understanding of the concepts. This will also help you get a better understanding of the questions that you might that might benefit you in the exam. Thank you, everybody.